I've said this many times in the past, but Superman is arguably the most famous superhero of all time. I mean, whenever you're watching a superhero parody film, more often than not, it's Superman that's taken inspiration from. He is literally the face of superheroes, and being as such, naturally there have been many adaptations of him over the years, especially in live action. From Kirk Allen in the original Superman serials, to Christopher Reeve in the Richard Donner films, to Henry Cavill in the Zack Snyder series, all the way up to David Corenswet in the James Gunn film. In this video, I want to discuss what makes David Corenswet's version of Superman one of the best. But before we can talk about that version of Superman, I think it's important we take a look at the character's cinematic history. While Kirk Allen first played him in live action in the original Superman serial, the first actual Superman movie came in 1951 with Superman and the Mole Men. In this film, Superman is played by George Reeves, who does a fine enough job with what he has to work with. I would say that Reeves' version of the character lacks depth, but given that in this time period the character was all out spectacle, his version works fine. Following the movie, Reeves would reprise his role in the Superman TV series the following years. Though, that's a whole nother topic. Fast forward to 1978 with Superman the movie, where the character is now played by Christopher Reeve. Reeves' version of the character was a role model, someone we were supposed to look up to. Everything he did on screen was magical, and rightfully so. These films are cinematic pieces of art. Well, at least the first two. And it's not just Superman that Reeve excelled with. His Clark Kent was brilliant as well. Never in a million years would I expect these two to be the same person. Now, following the disastrous Superman 4, the character went on a bit of hiatus for a few years. A fifth film was written but was never made, and since then there have been many attempts to get Superman off the ground. It wouldn't be until 2006 when we would finally get that fifth film, Superman Returns. In this film, the character was recast with Brandon Routh as the titular character, due to his resemblance to Reeve. And, well, while he's not doing a bad job, it's very clear that he was only cast because of that. Routh was given the unenviable task to mimic Christopher Reeve's performance, and, well, he kinda does to an extent, but it's very stiff and hollow. It's lacking depth that Reeve did in his films. I'm not going to give Routh too much crap for this. I understand that it's hard to give a good performance when you're specifically asked to mimic someone else's, and he would give a much better performance years later in Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he was asked to play his version of Superman and not mimic Reeves. Following Superman Returns, DC finally did what they should have done in the first place and hit the reset button. The DCEU's version of Superman, played by Henry Cavill, is very divisive even to this day. Man of Steel gave us a much different version of the character, something much darker than what we had previously. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I'm personally in the middle. While not everything he does in the film is perfect, it was a good starting point. The real problems with his character came with BVS. They turned Superman into a tyrant. He killed and threatened people and did whatever he wanted because he was powerful. Hell, there is literally a scene where a bunch of people worshiping him like he's some kind of god. Now, I didn't like this version of Batman either, but he actually had a point. Superman could have easily taken over the world if he chose to. It's also because of this weirdly written Superman that we don't feel anything when he dies at the hands of Doomsday. First of all, they shouldn't have adapted this so soon, but also, we need time to actually get to know the character before you kill him. Now, Justice League tried to course correct the character, and, well, while I do kind of prefer this over BVS, it's still really poorly written. In an attempt to steer away the character from Snyder's vision, they tried to turn him more into Reeve, even down to using the John Williams theme. As a result, it feels rushed, poorly written, and dare I even mention the CGI over his mouth. This version of the character would be retconned in the Snyder Cut, where the character is returned to his Man of Steel roots, even wearing his black suit from when he was resurrected in the comics. Aside from those four films, the character would appear in cameos elsewhere. He appeared in Shazam, Peacemaker, The Flash, though we never saw his face. He appeared at the end of Black Adam, where we actually did get to see him, setting up a team-up between the two, which would never be made. Now, the character has appeared on TV a few times. The 50s TV series, Lois and Clark, Smallville, The Arrowverse, Superman and Lois, but we're just focusing on the movies today. And that brings us to James Gunn's version of Superman, played by David Corenswet. First and foremost, this version of Superman has clearly taken heavy inspiration from Christopher Reeve's version, even down to the red trunks. In fact, the whole suit takes inspiration from a lot of different Superman suits. The overall basis is clearly based on Reeves, with lines from the New 52 suit and a logo from the Kingdom Come suit. Corenswet's Clark Kent is also very distinct. Like Reeves, I would never suspect these two to be the same person. Clark Kent just always feels like an afterthought in these films. Like, yeah, he's there, but the actors don't really do a good job at distinction. They play Superman and Clark more or less the same. However, I think Cornstalk was able to pull it off. He plays Superman like this heroic figure that protects all. Meanwhile, he plays Clark basically as himself. The character, I mean, not Cornstalk. Clark Kent is who he really is. It's who he grew up as, and it's who he chooses to be. His actions make him who he is, as Pa Kent would say in their scene together. In fact, for what little screen time they have, the Kents play a big part in this film. They're the ones that guided Clark on the path to being Superman. They took him in, raised him as their own. He may be an alien, but to them, he's their son. Even when Clark is in the worst place imaginable, they're still there to give him advice. They don't have all the answers or anything, like, no one does. But they know what to say to guide him on the right path. Now let's talk about Superman. I'm just gonna say it, this is the most heroic Superman we've gotten in a long time. I think the last one was like, I don't know, Tom Welling maybe? Superman cherishes life more than anything. He does everything he can to save it. People, animals, literally anything. And, well, to give Zack Snyder some credit, yeah, it's kind of impossible for Superman to save everyone. Like, how many casualties do you think came out of the Black Zero event? But what sets Gunn's version apart from Snyder's is that he tries to. The Kaiju fight is a good example of this. This giant monster is just tearing up everything in Metropolis. Yet, during the middle of the fight, Superman takes time out of his day to save a squirrel, a dog, an old lady. He even tries to prevent the death of the Kaiju itself. Even when Superman eventually learns the truth that he was sent to Earth to kill people, he still tries to save as many lives as he can. And of course, there's his iconic relationship with Lois Lane. These two are the most iconic couple in comic books, so much so that there's literally 2 TV shows about their relationship. The interview scene tells you basically everything you need to know about their dynamic. Lois is level-headed and thinks with reason, Clark thinks on what's right. That whole conversation was about whether Superman was in the wrong for getting involved in the war between Bravia and Jahanpur. To Clark, that conversation was absurd. People would die if he hadn't stepped in. However, Lois thinks differently. Bravia had always been an ally to the United States. Jahanpur, meanwhile, was an imperfect country. But despite that, in Superman's eyes, there's still people that don't deserve death. The two end up having a falling out over this, but after everything Clark's been through throughout the movie, the two end up making up. When it comes to the Justice Gang, it's pretty easy to think of them and Clark as tolerant work friends, but as the movie goes on, you get to understand more of their relationship. See, you think they just work together on occasion, but then Lois says this line,
Superman, he's your friend!
Which does imply that there's some sort of a friendship between the two. But while Superman tends to avoid casualties in order to help people, the Justice Gang tend to cause casualties whenever they try to help people. Most notably in the middle part of the film where Mr. Terrific ends the life of the Kaiju, and the climax where Hawkgirl ends the life of the President of Bravia. I don't know where I heard this from, but I remember when the film was in post-production, I remember hearing something about Superman inspiring a world where superheroes have gone bad, and, well, that's true to an extent, but the Justice Gang aren't necessarily bad. You have to remember that the Justice Gang aren't exactly a casual superhero team. They're a contracted one, as in a team funded by a business, that being Lord Tech, so it's most likely in their right to kill people if they choose to. I like to think that after the events of the movie, the Justice Gang would go on to cause less casualties after being inspired by Superman. I guess we'll find out in a future project. Krypto is a character I can only describe as a burden Clark cares for. A big change that they made with Krypto is that he's not Clark's dog, he's Kara's dog, and it's established in the DCU that Kara goes off-world quite a lot, leaving Krypto with Clark. You'd think after hearing that, Krypto would be somewhat of a burden to Clark as he's forced to watch him without choice, but you'd be wrong, as Clark cares very much for the dog as he does for his own cousin. Krypto, in the DCU anyway, is depicted as a very bad dog with no discipline, destroying everything he sees and attacking people. It's clear that the Superdog still has a lot to learn, and with his owner being absent most of the time, I guess it's all up to Clark, though it may take some time. I could go into Kara, but the Supergirl movie is right around the corner, so I think I'll save her for an eventual video on her. Alright, time to talk about Lex. Lex Luthor absolutely despises Superman, as evident in all of their scenes together. Lex is a very successful businessman. He has his own building, his own team, and a pretty good public image. And yet he's willing to throw all of that away just so he could kill Superman. In his eyes, there should not be anyone that's more loved than him. He is the most important figure. He is the one the world should bow before. Lex is so devoted to killing Superman that he's even willing to tear the whole world apart. And look where that got him. It will be interesting to see where their rivalry will go from here, as Lex will be forced to team up with Superman in Man of Tomorrow next year. So, we can only speculate how that will go. As of right now, the 2025 film is Clark's only real appearance outside of a few cameos. He will appear in Supergirl as a supporting character, but we'll see how that goes. Next year, he will return as the main character in Man of Tomorrow. And I think that's everything. So after hearing all that, it's time to answer the question. Does the DCU have the best Superman? Well, in movies? Yes, 100%. But if we're taking the TV shows into account, then I think it's a bit of a tie between him and Tom Welling. I don't know, I really like Smallville, and I think Welling has a very good take on the character, despite not wearing the cape ironically. Karen Sweater's really only been in one thing at the moment, and there is plenty of time to develop his version of the character. And I can't wait to see how that turns out.